Welcome back to GT Dreamer. Today we've got a special video for you. We're going to talk about the 05 Ford GT and how it compares to the 19 Ford GT. How did the designers come up with two cars sharing the same DNA, yet they're so different? And here's where we come to the proverbial fork in the road, and where these two designs diverge completely. Tradition would have said that this car had to have a V8. Well, you know what? A V8 was not going to win Le Mans in 2016. So what Ford did is they got the Daytona prototype engine and they built a car around it. They designed the car to be extremely aerodynamic at high speeds and fuel efficient, which are two of the most important things in order to win long distance endurance races. Now, don't be fooled by the size of this little engine. It's a lot bigger than you think. But what Ford and the designers did is they worked their magic and have all this architecture that you would normally see in an engine bay dispersed throughout this area back here. So it actually looks smaller than it really is. But it is an amazing piece of architecture. 647 horsepower, 550 pounds-feet of torque, twin turbo, top speed of 216 miles an hour, 0 to 60 somewhere around 3 seconds. Dry sump lubrication, and just so you can compare, I'm going to bring you right now to see the 05 engine bay. You can see how much different they are. So let me show you the engine bay in the 05. Here we have an engine and suspension that takes up the entire width of the car. 5.4 liter V8 supercharged. It came with 550 horsepower. This one has to be upwards of 600. And it's just a very, very cool, very elaborate piece of art that you can see through the windshield. Everybody admires this engine bay. You know, over the years we've done a few things here and there to make this engine bay look so much nicer. Just like the reservoir lids that we have here and the oil dipstick, as well as the valve covers. This one says the Legend Lives 4GT. Oh, these were made by a company. I believe they're called Project 321. I don't think they're making them any longer, but over the years, we've had a lot of different vendors make so many different pieces for this car that it just added to the enjoyment that the owners really had. Now, one of the greatest things about this platform is its adaptability. All the way from 550 horsepower, there have been mods that have brought it way over 1,000 horsepower. It's just a great platform to begin with. It's robust, it's fail-proof. You can't destroy this engine. And at the end of the day, if you do, you take it to a Ford dealership, get it worked on. Now, the suspension on this car are independent coilovers. This one in particular has the aluminum billet A-arms. Back in 05, there was a recall just after I got the car. And it said you can't drive it, you have to bring it back to the dealership, and we have this fixed. Well, this is one of 125 cars that have the solid aluminum billet A-arms, and they are amazingly beautiful. When you look down in here, they're just a work of art. Extremely expensive. Ford really went out of their way to fix an issue that they thought might happen. Not that anybody ever had a problem with it, but they just wanted to make sure that this car was as solid and as well built as they could make it. So you guys have more or less figured it out. The 05-06 GT, you want to consider an analog car. Amazing for its time, revolutionary, very fast, very capable, very old style, hot rod American muscle car in the mid-2000s. But things change. So if we look at this car as being analog, we have to then look at the next generation Ford GT as being digital. And that's where the biggest differences lie. Everything is a little bit different, but very similar. Now, one of the things that has changed dramatically is going over from this coilover suspension to the trick suspension based on hydraulics that we have in the next generation 4GT. Let's go see that. Now, the new generation 4GT has a double wishbone push rod suspension with changeable ride height and spring rate. That combination, straight out of racing. And for the first time ever, is used on a road car. Now, let me show you what it does in terms of the dynamics of the car. The best way for me to explain how these 5 different modes change the character of the car is to basically give you a rundown of what they do. So the first one from top to bottom is V mode. What you have there is that there's the wing completely lies flat. There's no resistance to the wind. You can achieve the highest possible speed in the car in V mode. Followed by wet mode is when it rains. Normal mode is good in the sense that you're driving and you don't want to, go very fast. You have normal mode, and then you can also do the comfort setting on the shock absorbers by a little switch down here, but you can only do that in normal mode. Followed by sport mode. Now, the sport mode is the one that I normally have the car in. It lets you feel more interaction with the car. It gives you the sporty character of the car. It really makes it blossom. But the most interesting one is track mode. In track mode, the car just, poof, it just drops automatically. And it is the most incredibly planted car on the track. Now, one of the biggest problems is that the ride height just comes down 50 millimeters. Well, you need to be very aware of the kind of roads that you have. You can't be using track mode on a regular road because you're going to bottom out, you're going to break the splitter, and that's a quite expensive mistake to make. So track mode, only for the track. It changes the entire dynamic of the car. Once you start going around a racetrack in track mode, you really understand what these engineers really had in mind for the car. It is frighteningly quick, agile, planted. It almost feels, you've heard the term, something that rides on rails. Well, that's what this car does. It feels like you're flying a fighter jet for the road. So let's talk about aerodynamics. The 05 4GT was designed, engineered, and then they said, well, let's add a gurney flap because we think we need that for high-speed stability. You know that most supercars have a wing in the back. Well, the 05 4GT did not. The only aerodynamic aid that it had in the back top of the car is this gurney flap. It's about, let's say, 4 feet, a little bit, maybe a little bit more than that. That, along with the cam back design and that massive rear splitter, that's it. That's all we have for aerodynamic aids. Very analog. Let's go and show you the 19. You can see that it's a lot different. So we have the same hydraulic system that powers the ride height and the spring rate of the car, also manages the rear wing. So this wing in VMAX mode is completely flat. The gurney flap does not extend that we have here, and there is no braking help for the car. All you have is a flat silhouette. Sport and track mode really use the wing to its advantage. Track mode is really interesting because when you brake with the wing deployed, it actually flips almost vertical and acts as a windbreak. So it actually helps you slow down the car. Now, the defining characteristics of the car has to definitely be the generation-defining flying buttress. You can see this entire fuselage is highlighted by the fact that there's nothing here. And what you have is the entire car being pinned down by high-speed wind coming over the car and through the car and creating an incredibly planted vehicle. And the higher you go, the more planted it seems to be. This is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful aesthetic design of any car that I have ever seen, and incredibly effective at doing what it was designed to do. So one of the things that this very, very tight fuselage has as in terms of a drawback, let's call it, is that it makes the inside of the cabin a little bit tighter, right? So whoever you're sitting with, you're gonna be rubbing shoulders most of the time. So you gotta be okay with that. Now, let me show you the inside of the cabin. One of the greatest leaps forward in technology has to be the fact that the entire car is made out of carbon fiber. There's only two small pieces of aluminum that are in the car, and that's just basically for safety reasons. This is a carbon fiber bridge that acts as a support mechanism for the car and part of the structure of the car. And over here we have, in the door panel, we have the number 9 ghosted. That's one of the coolest things ever. The 05 used a super plastic forming process that allowed the designers and the engineers to create very, very sumptuous curves in the car. That was used for the first time ever in the 0506 Ford GT. Now, finally, let's talk about the cabins. You have a very updated, tight, almost jet-like feel in the new generation Ford GT, and then you have a very retro look to the inside cabin of the 0506 Ford GT. You can see that the instrument cluster here is very reminiscent of the 1960s car. The steering wheel is a little bit smaller than most steering wheels, and the interior really is an updated version of the 60s car. And finally, the fuel cell of the car is inside the center stack. It's not the transmission, it's the fuel cell that's in here. So finally, we're going to talk about how these cars look in the front. 3 generations of Ford GT. They all share that very, very distinctive front slanted nose, just like a great white shark. But instead of being predators for the water, these cars are predators on asphalt. You see them in your rear view mirror. You know they look mean, they're nasty, but more importantly, they're fast. I want to thank you all for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Leave us comments. We love to talk to our subscribers. We love to talk to anybody that wants to give us their opinion about these videos. Stick around for the next one. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a great day.